watch them coming. Don't worry about it, no. Been so long, I felt this way. I ain't know where we know. This afternoon, streets turn gray as I watch the cars below. Still, I know I'll lead the way. Them voices tell me so. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about it, no. I ain't in no hurry. 'Cause I know where to go. Don't worry about me. Nah, don't worry about it, no. I ain't in no hurry. 'Cause I know where to go.
Prophet on the burning shore. Welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show. Mike Roper across the way. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app. Stream all of our live local shows, including Solomon on Blast and the Jim Parisi Show. We are full on extraterrestrial radio, and we thank you for making us part of your day today. Without further ado, I want to bring back a friend of the program, a timeless veteran and a genius and an engineer and a writer, and he lives in the great state of Oregon. Ken Babbs, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Well, it's good to be back and good to be live, going around the world and greeting everybody from Oregon, where we're in a heat wave for a few days of 100 degrees, so hunkering down in the house with cool air.
With the typewriter, right?
In the afternoon, yeah. Actually, in the morning when it's cool, I go outside and do outside work until about 10, and then got to come in.
Can you just talk to the audience about, Ken, about how your attitude and how important attitude is to salvation, in the sense of, I mean, you've been cooking for 5 or 6 decades now, and you show no signs of slowing down. Knock on wood, and you've been through so much, but I mean, attitude. Can you just talk about attitude and how that can be inspiring to people around you?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to talk about that, and it's actually 8 decades now.
Sorry, eight. Well, I mean, I don't know when you. Yeah, okay. So continue, please.
So I always say to people that are real upbeat, I like your altitude, because it shows they're still high and keeping the right attitude. And the main thing is to be upbeat about everything and not to let old gripes or mistakes or any of that kind of stuff hang you up, but just put them aside. And it comes a lot to do with you being able to control what's going on in your mind and what you're thinking about. You don't want to be thinking about these negative, downbeat thoughts, and when they come on, you got to be able to say, shut up, I don't want to hear it anymore. I've heard that 1,000,000 times already, and there's nothing we can do about it. Now, let's move on to something better. And this helps a lot. And then also, the other thing that helps a lot is staying active, working outside and keeping the body fit. And as Dr. Oz says, there's 5 things you got to work on. He says you got to work on your speed. I got a kick out of that. And your balance, and your agility, and your strength. And so anything you can do to keep all those things going, keeps your body going. As we well know, the body is the temple, and inside the temple, you got to better keep things cleaned up. You don't want the money changers in there, messing around.
Mr. Babbs, can you be with as objective as possible? Were any of the pranksters kind of hung up on things in the past, or if things were trending against them, their attitude would change, or people, I mean, how did you guys work to, were all of you in that, I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's plenty of opportunities around, in your existence where you're out of money, you're out of LSD, the bus is out of gas, people are bemoaning things, it looks like it's going south, and then maybe you and Walker and Kesey or somebody, rights the ship. Were there any cats in the pranksters that had trouble letting go, and it affected their attitude, and you guys had to kind of course correct?
Well, yeah, I think it affected everybody. It was kind of hung up with this stuff, because it's one of the things is from birth on, you're imprinted with a lot of stuff. And a lot of those things are things that you don't want to be thinking about all the time. So we did certain things that would, altogether, that would be like a drill. Like I remember one is the Now trip, where we'd have the microphone and the speakers going, and we'd be on a bus ripping down across the country, and everybody would say, okay, now I'm looking out the window. I see trees. Oh, there's a big old bear, and it's attacking a deer. Oh, my gosh, that was gone quick. But now my heart is fluttering like a son of a bitch. Is that going to be me the next time, you know? And then you'd pass it on to the next guy, and he'd say, or a woman or whoever it was. And he'd do the same thing. We'd go around that. Because when you're in the now, you're not, you know, dwelling with the past. You know, and it's Kesey described it as like we're in a boat, and in the boat is the present. That's what we are now. We're doing. He says, and the past is behind us. He says, and the rudder steers us along, and up ahead is the future, and the rudder is needed. You know, with all the stuff that's happened behind you as a way of guiding you forward. And so when anybody would get a little bit down or dwelling on something, or you'd see them a little morose or something, you'd have to go and shake them up and get them to do the Now trip and bring them back in.
The Now trip. The Now. So you had to shake them up and do the Now. Did anyone have to shake you up?
Me up?
Yeah. I mean, ever give Babbs a pep talk for the Now trip?
Well, no. Nobody messed with me.
Let me. You know,
I'd pull my Marine Corps on them.
Well, I mean, that to me is also that is still compelling to me, and we can get into that in a minute. I want you to unpack this for me. In our first interview back in May, I quoted you saying, "Kesey really said it well. Our saving grace was to always fail."
Yeah.
What does that mean? Give me an example of failing in the pranksters failing, or what did that mean, and how was that a saving grace?
Well, I'll give you a good example, which is when we took the bus trip to New York and back in '64. We taped and filmed the whole thing, and we were going to have a really big-time movie that would show in the theaters because it would be something nobody had ever done before. A combination of a documentary and that we on the bus, we'd be high and we'd stop somewhere and people would come gathering around the bus, they'd see it and we'd go out and there's always, as you know, a drama that takes place outside a 7-Eleven store or something. And you can get in there and participate in it, but you've got to be good at what you do because you don't want to antagonize these people. You want to join in on whatever it is and bring them up there, make them happy, and pretty soon you're playing your instruments, and, you know, we're filming and taping the whole thing, and we drive away, and they're clapping and yelling and cheering, and the kids are chasing after the bus. And when this comes out as a movie, nobody has ever seen anything like this in their lives. Well, as it worked out, we weren't able to do the editing very well because the generator that ran the sound on the Sony tape recorder would speed up and slow down. So when we go to edit the movie, the sound would be way all over the place, you know, whereas the film was running steady.
Wow.
And so we never did then. Well, and then we got busted for pot at Kesey's. And so Kesey, when they asked him, what happened to that movie, Kesey, he'd say, well, we got arrested. It was a double meaning. We got arrested by the cops, and we got the whole project arrested. And from that, we went into doing the acid tests where we could show the movies on the walls of the building. And so what happened was we failed. And it was a beneficial thing for us. It was good that we didn't become big-time movie makers and, you know, wooed by Hollywood and get into that whole trough of despair, as Hunter Thompson called it. But it went back to doing our own thing, coming up with new trips, new ideas, new projects. And every time we'd get something going like that, like when we did Twister or this big musical play and with the cast of 15 in a band, and we took it all over the West Coast. It never made it, never went to New York, and never became a big hit because the way Kesey saw it, this would catch on, and other groups, other theater groups would pick it up, and, you know, well, and the other thing that would happen from all this is we'd make a bundle of money.
That's right. Well, no, I mean, that to me, I mean, so you're saying that the acid trips did not start cultivating until after the film project that got arrested?
Yes, after we got busted, and we were kind of aimless there. But I'll tell you what happened is one of the reasons we got busted was we'd work on the movie, Kesey and I editing, and doing the best we could with the sound problem. And on Saturday night, we'd show whatever we worked on all week. And the word got around the Bay Area what we were doing, and pretty soon people started pouring into Kesey's place on Saturday nights for this big movie party. And it just got to be too much. I mean, it was a mess, you know. We'd have to clean it up, and Kesey's poor wife, you know, and kids were there. And so we decided we'd rent little halls and go do it there, you know, and get it out of the house. And, well, the thing of it is, at that time, acid had really, you know, come on in the San Francisco, and it was different from anywhere else, as we found out, in that the San Francisco people weren't tied into the big L.A. money and the big L.A. Record business, moving business, and so they were all people were doing on their own all kinds of things like we were doing in the acid tests in terms of dance and movie making and music, you know, and art and all that. And our thing that we'd do at these halls would bring all these people together, and then as we did them in these halls, they got bigger and bigger until finally there was this thing in January of '66 called the Trips Festival in in San Francisco at the Longshoremen's Hall, which brought all the disparate groups together in one 3-day acid festival. They might as well call it that. I mean, you know, it was all psychedelic.
That's what it was.
And
that's what it was.
That's what it was.
Yeah, right.
Exactly right. And it was a really wonderful thing to all of us to realize, hey, there's a bunch of us doing this. And so I got a guy now who wants me to do a thing about how we helped form the hippies and influence the hippies. I keep saying, no, we were too old for the hippies. But
well, no, I mean, yeah, no, this is. Go ahead. I want you to finish. Go ahead, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was I talking about? We were talking about being happy that we were all doing it. Oh, I know what it was. Kesey, when they'd say to him, you know, things like that, you know, he'd say, no. He says, we didn't create the wave. The wave just happened, he says, and we were lucky to ride the crest of the wave. He says, but there were thousands of other people riding that same wave. He says, and the wave is still going. And this was like in 1974 when someone asked him that. And he says, and the wave is still going. He says, it's all the way to Kansas now.
Was it easier, like when the movie didn't work out, you know, I mean, today you're talking about billion-dollar budgets for stuff. You guys were just cranking across the country. But the idea is that you just talked about this divide, and I'm always fascinated by the sound, the regional sound of jazz in San Francisco versus the regional sound of jazz in Southern California. And obviously the vibe in San Francisco was, you know, improvisation, making real music, screw the record company. I mean, and then L.A. was just greed, right? So the idea is like part of the way that, do you think that part of the reason you guys were able to get over the whole movie thing was just because, I mean, you could have made a boatload of money, but you guys were never about that anyway.
Well, we would never turn down money for anything, but
right. No, I know. What I'm
saying is, you know, the reason we were saved, and it was a wonderful thing, was we could return to our regular lives and our families and living normal kind of things, and not be in the media spotlight all the time, you know, and with your whatever you're doing, you know, splashed all over the magazines and TV and all that. We managed to avoid all that stuff, which was good for us. It was healthy for us. You know, I still today don't want to be caught up in any of that. Kesey talked about the spotlight is looking all the time. They're always looking for something to, you know, build up in the media world. He says, but the problem with that spotlight is it also has crosshairs in it. He says, and once those crosshairs on you, he says, your life is in danger because there will be people who will pick you out as being the reason for something that's going on in their heads, and, you know, just like John Lennon and many others that we know.
Talking to Ken Babbs here, live worldwide on Power Talk on the Jake Feinberg Show. What was the closest you guys came to getting onto somewhere near the Washington, D.C. area, the government buildings? I was transcribing this thing with Wavy Gravy where he talked about the hog farm. They ran out of gas and money in San Francisco in a cross-country trip because they wanted to smoke grass on the steps of the Department of Agriculture steps. Did you? And they actually wound up doing that with the help of a commercial that Tom Wolfe helped fund. Did you wind up? Were you there, or did you wind up doing anything? Was there ever a mission to sort of affect public policy or put pressure on politicians in that kind of sense?
Never. I mean, we were so removed from all that. I mean, when we were on that bus going across country, we didn't know what was going on anywhere. We didn't see any newspapers, never listened to the radio, never watched TV. We were like a weird little capsule going through it. I mean, and we went through the South during that time, the civil rights unrest. And the only time we had a hint that something was going on, we get stopped by the cops, and they'd wanted to know if we were freedom riders.
Really? So can you talk about that? Because I mean, it's funny. I've been talking to cats. Even in 1980, they were dragged out of cars in Louisiana by the Klan. But I mean, can you talk about they just? Can you talk about that experience of the?
Well, I can't say any more about it. When we explained what we were doing and we were making this movie, and he'd see the cameras and everything, and that we were. The other thing about us is we were clean-cut people. We were there were no long hairs in our group. We were too old for that too. Even and college graduates, all of us, and we all had our outfits on that we wore for the sake of the movie. No, they could tell right away that. And they just say, "Okay, go on," and particularly if, Neil Cassidy, our driver, sometimes would make them a little suspicious because of his way of just going off, talking like crazy and smoking cigarettes and being real nervous and not nervous, but the way he was.
Yeah.
And when I'd see something like that going on, I'd go over there and start talking to the cop and let him know, I was in the Marine Corps and that, and Cassidy would be all pissed off at me, but he'd sulk away, and then we'd move on. And so this kind of became our MO for the whole trip. That whenever we got stopped, if Cassidy looked like if the cops looked like they thought there was something up with Cassidy, I'd go in and cool them out.
Well, I mean, on top of the fact, I'm just surprised that you guys weren't pulled over continuously for speeding or reckless driving or things like that.
Oh, never. For one thing, the bus could only go at max, 55 miles an hour. A 1939 International Harvester school bus, had been converted into a camper. And not only that, but Cassidy was a real good driver. I'll tell you what happened. Is when we first started off, race cars were his thing, and he was always talking about race cars. He knew all the race drivers that talked about them, and all their races and everything. And he, at one point, we were going along, and there were people up there, and he was talking, and he was going to demonstrate the four-wheel drift, with the bus. And then some of us were in the back, all of a sudden, whoo, we go over to one side and over to the other side, and I yell after him. I say, "Hey, Neil, what?" He says, "That stuff's okay in a car or on a racetrack." He says, "But in the bus, no." I says, "What's the sign of the best driver in the world?" He says, "What do you mean?" I says, It's to drive in such a way that nobody in the bus knows we're even moving, and we can walk around freely. Nobody's getting knocked around or anything like that. Let's see if you can do that." Oh, is he mad at me? But on the other hand, from then on, it was strictly straight driving by the rules and everything. Yeah, because by then, we were a real team, and nobody wanted to do anything to upset the apple cart, particularly with any kind of authorities. And getting back to that political thing, so we never were pushing any kind of political agenda. As Kesey said, the only spirit is the only currency that counts. He says, so it became like our work wherever we went, and still to uplift the spirits of those who are around us, because when the spirits are up, everything's okay, and all those things you said about being broke or hurt or any of that kind of stuff brings you down. But if you can get your spirit back up, then you can endure those things. Like Kesey one time said, "Hey, we may be broke, but we're not poor, because poor is a state of mind, really."
This is so important, man. I mean, this is so. Do you? Is your wife still teaching, by the way?
Oh yeah.
Do you ever get called in as a guest speaker to talk to the kids?
Every year.
I mean, they should. You should be talking. I mean, because this is so. I mean. Well, we could digress here. I was just, since we last talked, I've been hired to produce a film documentary on Stan Getz, and then another project that popped up was about a former NBA and ABA player, and I wanted to talk to you about if your paths crossed and what your thoughts were on him as a guy named Rick Barry.
Oh, Rick Barry, yeah, I know who he was for sure, the Barry family. But I never met him. The only NBA players I met was through our center at Miami University, where I played basketball. Wayne Embry, who played in the pros for, I don't know, like 8 years.
What do you think about from a distance with Rick Barry? I mean, how did you view him, not just as a player, but what was, because it's interesting reading his story. He was a very prolific player, but controversy was always following him. He didn't care about that. I was just curious about what your thoughts were.
Well, I don't know. I never followed him either. I mean, just to know who he was. And didn't he shoot free throws underhanded?
He did. He definitely innovated that style.
He didn't innovate that style. That was the old-fashioned way of doing it forever. We even had a guy on our team in Miami that shot him that way.
He was prolific, but yeah, okay. So did Hunter S. Thompson? Can you tell me a story about your Hunter S. Thompson with the Pranksters? How did he get involved?
Well, we first met Hunter S. Thompson when they're at La Honda. This was after the bust, and when we were, it's kind of between acid tests. No, maybe it was before. I can't remember, but it was the summer. Oh, and Kesey met Freewheeling Frank up in San Francisco at a poetry reading, and Frank read a poem, and Kesey thought it was pretty good, and he was obviously a Hell's Angel, had all his gear on and everything, and Kesey talked to him and invited him down to La Honda, and so Frank showed up there with 3 other Angels, and they shot the shit and set up that the Angels would come and camp out for a weekend at Kesey's and take acid and get to know one another. And so Hunter S. Thompson shows up with him, except nobody knew who he was. He was just this skinny guy, and he had a dog collar around his neck and a chain attached to it, and a Hell's Angel would have the chain, and different people would do it, but he'd always be walking around with that chain. But then later on, Freewheeling Frank wrote his book about the Angels, and then Hunter, he wrote one about the Angels, and so we kind of knew about him. And I can't remember where we actually ran into him again for a while, but he got faxing Kesey at Kesey's house, different things, and he'd fax Kesey and say, "I need acid." He says, "I'll send you $100. And so he sent Kesey a $100 bill, and Kesey threw it in the drawer and didn't pay attention to it. And after a while, he kept getting these faxes. "Where's my acid? Where's my $100 bill?" And Kesey, he sent a fax. He says, "Okay, here," and he faxed the $100 bill back on the fax machine.
So it sounds like you guys didn't take him that seriously, really.
Well, I'll tell you for one thing, Hunter S. Thompson was a hell of a good guy.
Tell me about that, because I sort of admire him, and so tell me about him. Tell me why he was a good guy.
He was a good guy because he was been in the Air Force, and he was a writer, and he had a very, very sharp mind, as you can tell. And his job became to puncture the hot air balloons of all the politicians and all the bullshit that was going on, and he could do it very well. And Kesey and him as writers got along really good, and he liked me too for my style, and we'd play poker once in a while, and when he'd be out there in Oregon, he came out to talk there a couple of times, and one time he was writing a story about the Honolulu Marathon for Running Magazine, which was based in Eugene, and they couldn't get him to finish it, so they brought him to Eugene and put him in a motel room and wouldn't let him out. And then he demanded marijuana, and they said, "How are we going to get him marijuana?" He says, "Call Babbs, and he'll get it for me."
Call Babbs.
Yeah, and so they called me. I said, "What, Hunter Thompson? He's here, yeah." "Yeah, he wants some weed." And I said, "Okay." And I thought, "Oh, boy, I'll get to see Hunter." And so I went and knocked on the door, and they opened it a crack, and they wouldn't let me in. I said, why not? He said, no, nobody's seeing him until this is over. And so I had to slip it through the crack in the door, and they paid me my $30 for a lid. And I left, and I found out that Hunter had locked himself in the bathroom. And when they came to get him and tell him that they had the weed, he opened the door and had lit a whole thing of firecrackers, a whole string of firecrackers, and he threw it out at their feet as they all went popping off and everything. And he did those kind of things. But anyway, he finished the story, and after he was done, we met with him at a bar, and we were shooting the shit, and he had to go catch the plane. And he was really sharp. He had his shorts on, and he had his high socks, white socks, and white sneakers, and his hat, and his cigarette, and his long holder, and his glasses. And he's really, a good-looking, sharp guy. And so Kesey and I jump into Kesey's convertible, and we're going to leave, and Kesey says, yell at him, come over here a minute. I saw Hunter was standing over by his car. I yelled, hey, Hunter, come here a minute. Tell us again what time your plane leaves. And he comes running over, and he just gets to the door, and Kesey throws a lit string of firecrackers under his feet. And he did the hop dance.
Yeah, the hot potato. I love it, dude. Kesey really was.
It was so funny. Yeah. Then Kesey drove off.
Dude, Kesey loved Hunter, right? I mean, he just was. I mean,
oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean that is so. Can you give me a status update on the bus? Has any? I was reading this article, and George Walker was talking about. There's no consensus on what to do with the bus, but that was a few years ago. Has there any development?
Well, there's two buses. There's the original 39 International Harvester that we finally retired and put in the swamp, and then Zane and his wife decided they'd get it refurbished, and bring it back to life, and they towed it out of the swamp and parked it in the orchard, waiting for the I don't know how much money to come in. But meanwhile, in the 70s, Kesey had bought another bus that we used to go to a book convention in L.A., and that became the bus, and it still is the bus.
Where's that bus located?
Well, it's still there at Kesey's farm. There's a building he built called the Bus Barn, and now the two buses sitting there side by side.
Oh, I love it. The 70. Can you talk about the cultivation of the Veneta, Kesey's farm up there, and when you first made it up there? Because there were some great. I mean, there still are music shows up there, but I know there was some great that legendary Grateful Dead show from '72. When did Oregon and Kesey and Veneta and become this new place post Bay Area, post Menlo Park for Babbs and Kesey and you guys?
Well, Kesey's farm is in Pleasant Hill, and then Veneta, where the concert was, is on the other side of town. And so Kesey's dad had originally bought this farm in Pleasant Hill, and then his brother got it. And Kesey, meanwhile, was doing 6 months in the honor camp in California, and returned to Oregon in '67 and took over the farm, bought it from his brother. And so that became his place. Now, his brother, Chuck, and his wife, Sue, they run an outfit called the Springfield Creamery, and all you people out there should get to know, what's it called? Nancy's Honey Yogurt, which is the best yogurt in the world, full of acidophilus and other valuable microbes for your tummy. And it's all over the country now.
Are you saying that it's the tastiest or it's the healthiest?
Both.
So, and this is how you're continuing your pilgrimage towards enlightenment and health in old age. You eat a lot of it?
Oh God, yeah, every day or every other day. Yeah, I just had some today on pancakes.
Oh, I love you plugging these local Oregon. Let's hear it again. What is it? What's it called?
It's called Nancy's Honey Yogurt.
All right.
And it comes from the Springfield Creamery in Eugene, Oregon.
I mean, yeah. So anyway, let's Veneta. Let's talk about Veneta.
Okay, back to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So anyway, the creamery was in trouble. They had lost their milk contract, and they didn't know what to do, and they hadn't gone into yogurt yet. And someone said, "Well, let's have a concert." And someone else said, "Yeah, get the Grateful Dead." So one of the guys went down and asked them if they'd do it, and they did it as a benefit for the Springfield Creamery, and it was the first outdoor concert like that. in 1972 out in this big parking lot of this big field. And, like 20, 30, 40,000 people showed up, and the Grateful Dead played, and it was the hottest day on record then. I think it went up to like 106 degrees. And they played all the way through to the end. I don't know if you ever heard that music from that, but that Dark Star at the end, as the sun went down, there is nothing like that in the world. I mean, that's not only Grateful Dead, jazz, rock and roll, symphonic, it's everything you can think of, and almost all of it, completely made up.
Where were you there?
Oh, God, yes. I was
awesome.
Master of Ceremonies, and Kesey and I... we filmed the whole thing.
No, I know. There's an amazing... Wait, hold on, because this is so... So you were the Master of Ken Babbs, Master of Ceremonies at probably one of the most iconic... And the Dead played thousands of shows. That's one of them. And then, I mean, the video is wild. I mean, there's like these stage shots of like these women on these up on these poles dancing, these wooden poles, and then there's... Yeah. I mean, you guys... Everybody
just pitched in and did that themselves. People we knew, they came out of the woods. Everybody that just joined in and did that. It was a real Oregon thing. And it's really important to see that now, to see the spirit that existed at that place in 1972 and how wonderful it was, and to think, oh, my gosh, if only it could be like that now. And, I'll tell you a funny thing.
Mm-hmm.
Zane took the bus out in 2014, the 50th year anniversary of our bus trip, went to the East Coast and back, and they filmed the whole thing, as we did. And I watched the movie, and there are these same events happening all over the country, but they're much smaller. They're outside of towns. They're like in woodsy places or on farms and all that, and they have a little stage, and these really good local bands play. And everybody out there is high, and they're doing the hula hoops. They're dancing and carrying on and doing fire, with their mouths and twirling fiery things. They're doing all the stuff that we did, and I realized, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. It's all still alive and happening, but they are avoiding the big stage because they know that has just been captured by the promoters and the big money makers and all that kind of stuff, and you can't do anything at those places like you used to.
This is very important. Okay, so first of all, the corporatization of music that's the point you're making on the back end. But what you said before, it's happening but smaller. So what was bigger about it when you got? Can you give an example of a bigger celebration when you guys were on the bus?
Well, when we were on the bus, there was none of that.
Yeah, but
we got back and did that outdoor concert in '72 that we saw how big it really was and how many people were doing it. But like I say, it was still local, and it was us doing it and filming it and taping it. And that's another good example of one of our wonderful failures was that movie. We thought that movie would go right then. It'd be the first ever, concert outdoor movie, and of a tremendous scene, and it was really done, a really good job editing and all that. But for some reason, when the Grateful Dead guys saw it, they didn't like it because it was so hot. They thought their instruments were out of tune. Now, I don't know how true that was, because as years went on, they didn't give a shit either, but it got all tied up.
That is one of the lamest. That's not even true. It's not even.
I don't know. I mean, that's what they told us.
All right, I'm just going to let you.
I was bugging them for a long time to get it done. Finally, I just gave up. I realized, and so finally, when it came out, as a viddy, and it was owned by Rhino Records now, and nobody that ever made the movie, or even the guy that produced it, put all his money into it, got any money out of it at all. And when the viddy came out, this box set. Rhino wanted me to write something for it. And I said, sure. I said, what's the pay? He said, well, nothing. I said, well, I'm not going to do it for nothing. And they said, oh, come on. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll do it for $100. I said, okay, $100. And so I did it. They never paid me.
That's not cool. I'm sorry. I don't find that funny. I really...
Well, I do.
Well, I'm glad. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Because this is an example of what we're talking about. Our ability to fail is always the best thing, because now I get the biggest kick out of it. In fact, when Keith and I were talking about this, I says, well, the reason this happens to us, he says, why? I said, because we're rubes. I said, these guys are slick. We're rubes. He says, and I said, but get this. He says, what? I said, we are God's own rubes. We are God's chosen rubes.
I love
says,
that.
What? And I said, yeah, because when it happens to us, we're glum for a while, but then pretty soon we see the bright side of it and see what we escaped, luckily, and then we go on, and do it again.
Well, okay, but let's back up for a minute. I don't think that this is failure. I think this is disrespect.
Failure is only a word.
Well, tell me about disrespect, though. To me, it's disrespect.
That is only a word. We don't care about any of that. All we care about is that life, and you, because it goes back to the thing you talked about at the beginning. How do you stay upbeat and happy all the time? It's to be like that. Is to realize these are people that are not enlightened, and the only way we can do anything is to be in some situation where they can become enlightened and see, how to be. But that's a big job, because there's so many people now and so many corporate people that are not enlightened, and are only in it for what they can get out of it, and they see nothing wrong with screwing the other people or not paying up. They think that's part of the deal, part of the ball game.
They got to see how to be.
Can't let that bother you.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is enlightening. That's God's rubes right there, like you were saying.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I say. That's what I say. That's why we were lucky. We were fortunate, and I'll tell you, it was because of LSD. Before LSD, we were ordinary people, doing ordinary things, trying to succeed in ordinary ways. And then suddenly, with the good stuff we had, that signed-off stuff, our minds were expanded. We saw through the bullshit that was going on that made us think, what was right and what was wrong when it was just all lies. And also be able to explore the cosmos and to explore the inner part of you, and to realize finally the interconnectedness of everything, and that how our mission is to keep that alive, and to be kind and nice and help, and not hurt or, be mean or any other kind of stuff. And so really you got to just devote your whole life to that.
I love it.
No matter what your job is, you still got to work.
Can you talk about an experience on LSD when it became clear to you that it was your mission to spread this kind of enlightenment? I mean, was there I'm not saying there was a demarcation, but I mean, like you said, we realized the interconnectivity of everything, and we realized it was our mission. Some people's mission is, I just want to do more and more acid and go to more and more concerts, or I want to get more and more of more drugs, or I want more money. But you guys said, no, we need this is our mission to enlighten. Can you talk about a moment with just Babbs?
Well, there was no particular moment. I mean, it's every time we'd take acid, it would be more of the same, of more knowledge, more expansion of the consciousness, more including more of what's going on, and it's not like LSD was not a party drug for us, and not just getting high was not the point, but to get something from it like this, some kind of knowledge that you didn't have before. And for other people, I don't know. For one thing, I don't know what the LSD is like that people are getting. There's no way of knowing.
If you were in this team concept of the Pranksters, if there's an enclave out there today listening in Jerusalem, or in somewhere in Egypt, or even maybe right in your backyard somewhere near that honey yogurt place, and they're trying to figure out how to be a team, and how not to get bogged down, and how not to get bogged down by words, and how to actually formulate a consciousness trip or be part of the lineage, what do you think the key ingredients are, not in 1962 or the late 50s, but in 2016? What would be your advice to a commune of pranksters that are looking to continue the lineage? What are the ingredients do you think that are most important for teamwork?
Well, I think most of all, it's the love of one another, for each other. That without that, you're in trouble. And then to work together on some project, as a team project, and be kind of self-sufficient too, if you can. Raising your own food and as much as you can, and also contributing everybody into the pot for money. It's all these kind of communal things you can do together. And also, if you're into it, to do your music and your dance or your art or whatever, and let people do it in places where people can see it and hear it and everything, and see what you're doing. And so you're working not only on your own scene, but you're working out of it too, out into the world.
can you give an example of how you talked before about being on the journey and on the bus and getting out with your instruments and playing for local folks, but did you guys harvest your own food? You always kicked your own money in. Can you give an example of how you did it within the Pranksters?
Well, yeah, when Kesey went to jail in 1967, it was right at the beginning of the year, and 67, that was the summer of love. Well, so we were all still in the Bay Area, but things were changing by then. The word was out, the publicity was in about San Francisco, and so it was attracting more and more people, and all the flower children were followed quickly by the sharks, and so it was not the kind of place we wanted to be around anymore. We wanted to get away, and a lot of people that were early acid heads did the same thing. They went, as somebody said, they went under the asphalt. They went back down into the earth, and they flocked into Northern California, into Oregon.
I did.
And so we all came, all the pranksters came up here to Oregon, and we had kind of a communal scene there at the Kesey farm while he was in jail. And that went on for a while until, as time went on, we branched out into found our own places and lived in our own places. And so a bunch of us are still around. But that one summer we were there, yeah, you talk about it. I mean, we were buying 100-pound or 50-pound sacks of rice, beans, and flour, and making tortillas and eating that and growing vegetables, and pretty much doing all that as much as we could. And then some guys would go out and do jobs, odd jobs and that and everything. But there were those kind of communes all over around Eugene, man, in those days.
So you pretty much, Kesey went to jail in the summer of love, 67,
yeah.
And then Babbs moved. You guys, the Pranksters, moved to Southern Oregon, or after that, or where did?
No, right when Kesey went to jail, we all, on our own, moved up to Oregon and just gravitated to Kesey's farm because it was the place to go. There was nobody living there. It was just a barn and a trailer, and but it had a pump and a septic tank and all that. And so we just set up housekeeping there, and we built a little room that we called the dining hall, and it had a kitchen and everything. There was a kitchen, eating everything. Yeah, it was really neat. It's interesting, this year, 2016, this whole decade we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the 60s. So every year something gets a big play. Well, we're lucky this year that nothing gets a big play because of the election. But next year, watch and see the big scene that's going to be in the media and the reminiscences and the interviews and the movies and everything about the Summer of Love. We're going to be splashed with the Summer of Love. And then we're building up to 2019, the year of Woodstock. I mean, that's going to be the climactical celebration. Because also in America, we not only celebrate something when it's 50 years old, the minute it's over, we forget about it.
Well, no, you make a good. Can you talk in your mind about the music? There was a flood of outsiders that came into to San Francisco in '67. It was much more of a local community, and then in '67, people from Chicago and New York and this and that. Fundamentally, how did that change San Francisco? And also, do you really think that have you been to San Francisco recently, and are you amazed at how little indigenous culture is actually left?
What do you mean, the Indians?
No, I mean the cats that grew up in that area, like Gregorico and Carlos Santana and Kreutzmann, those cats local music came up and formed, and then it became a national treasure. But now I'm just saying, with gentrification, I mean, when I just was there for my anniversary in March, I couldn't believe how much young foreign, how many Europeans are there, how much foreign money is there. And what I'm saying is that people don't, if they don't know their history, if they don't know where they came from, how are you supposed to move forward? To me, that's all I'm trying to say. I mean, to me, it's like, how did San Francisco change after the Summer of Love, and how do you view it today?
Well, it changed the way everything changed. Once the attention is on a certain place, and not only that, the beauty of San Francisco and the bay and everything about it is so great and wonderful, and the weather and all that. I mean, it'd be a great place to go no matter what. But with all the stuff that it has to offer, you know, like Haight-Ashbury, you know, the heart of the 67 Summer of Love, still is a hell of a place. Did you go there when you were there?
I absolutely did. I mean, Golden Gate Park, I saw Kezar Stadium, which was just glowing there.
Yeah.
And it was just
we saw the Beatles there. No, it wasn't Kezar. It was the inside place. I take it back.
It was the, you know, this is, I just, you know, I mean, to me, it's like the cost of living versus minimum wage.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what I'm saying is there is an epidemic of poverty. I was in San Francisco 16 years ago. It was bad. Yeah. Now it's an epidemic. I mean, that's you know, and that is what this mindset that we've been channeling this whole hour is this idea of weaving in and out. But Babbs, I mean, enlightenment, I mean, it sure, I sure hope it comes quicker than, you know, sooner than later. I mean, we
because nice. But you're right. This is really the crux of the matter in America today is, as the rich get richer and even the upper middle class get richer and the others start sinking lower and lower, from that cesspool has to arise something that we don't even know what it is, but hoping that it'll be something wonderful and not something awful. But something's got to happen because it can't go on like this. I mean, unless we're going to be content with being a
banana republic,
yeah, well, not that, but content with, like a banana republic, where we have a lot of rich people and then a lot of poor people and, you know, and a lot of really destitute people and the homeless people and all that. You know, I don't know what's going to happen with that. All I know about that is our job as individuals is when we're in those scenes is that we treat every one of those people like a real person, you know, and not like a throwaway person, which is the way a lot of the world sees them as, you know.
I agree.
Like in Katrina down there, you know, a lot of people attitude was, well, these are just throwaway people. It doesn't matter what happens to them. But it does. Everybody matters, and so. But that's all we can do by ourselves. I'll tell you, walking around Kesey, I don't care where we are, what city or anything, but particularly in Eugene a lot, is he treated every single person he met the same way as another human being. Looked them in the eye, shook their hands, said hello, tapped them on the shoulder if they needed help, gave them some help, whatever he could, you know. But just left them feeling better about themselves.
You know, can you step back for a minute and talk about? I was reading last night about at the Longshoremen's Hall when the Pranksters would play, or the Dead, or whoever else. And the distortion was so heinous that you actually you're an engineer. I mean, you actually figured out a way to modulate the sound so that it was not so harsh. Can you talk about that whole experience and how you did it?
Well, the thing about it that made it hard was with all these groups coming together with their own sound gear and everything, and then the microphones on the stage. But we had a wonderful guy we met there, Don Bukla's his name. He's one of the guys that first invented the synthesizer, Bay Area guy.
What was his name?
Don Bukla, B-U-C-H-L-A. Tremendous guy.
He's still around?
He is.
Oh, my God. He invented I always thought it was Morton Subotnick or something. Go ahead. Continue.
Well, he and Moog were the
Moog, that's
first
right. Moog.
guys.
I meant Moog. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, they were the first.
Wow.
So anyway, they had a balcony that ran along both sides of the hall, and at the back of the hall, they'd set up this big scaffolding and had all the sound gear up there. Bukla had his stuff on there, and nobody had ever seen anything like it or heard anything like it before. He had 10 speakers, 5 on each side, on each of the balconies, lined up all along the hall, all connected. And then he had this keyboard that was nothing. It was just a flat thing with these stripes on them that were, you know, I don't know, connected. You know, so your fingers, when they touch them, they put out sounds. And then he had it arranged so you could play that thing and make music on it and send it zooming around these 10 speakers. It's starting up here, all the way around over here and back and forth. and adding echo and everything. Well, this was right up our alley. We'd done all this shit too. So, but with our tape recorders, you know, we'd have 2 tape recorders set up apart and run the tape through 2 tape recorders, recording on one, playing back on another, re-recording on another, and, you know, creating all kinds of weird effects. So the whole problem was getting that all balanced, you know, so it wasn't all, like you said, distorting everything. But this is always one of the things that happened in the acid test, that was part of it, was getting that all to work and to have the band's sound get suddenly real clear and everything. So, you know, it didn't happen when you first walked in.
No, but I mean, you play. Can you talk about your role in soothing that and in evening it out? Because it was.
Well, yeah, because I got my hands on the controls that are controlling the volumes, and I'm also controlling the microphone sounds too. All the stuff that's being broadcast out into the room, and so it's finding that balance, you know, and not getting any feedback or any kind of stuff until. Well, you got to have a good ear for it, you know, and I like it to be real nice, so I always try to do it real good. But I loved working with stereo and all those effects and everything. I still do.
Were you working with like Owsley and those cats, or I mean, who?
Owsley wasn't around then. I mean, he was around, but he wasn't working or anything. No, this is just that night. It was just me and Don Buchla and also the guys in the bands. Well, you know. There was a funny thing with the Grateful Dead. They were setting up their stuff, and people were. You know, it's another thing at these acid tests. People just milled around. They'd go rap on the stage, you know. And well, for a long time, we had no stage. So when the band playing, there'd be people right up there amongst them, you know, and messing around and stuff. And so all that's going on up there, and they can't get anything to work right and everything. And finally, Jerry went over there, and he looked, and somebody had stepped on his guitar and broken it. Snapped the neck.
Oh.
So he just said to hell with it and went down in the crowd. So the Grateful Dead never did play that night. It was Saturday, a 3-night affair, and Saturday night was the Pranksters and the Grateful Dead and other stuff. Yeah, so that's the way things go.
Hey, you know who I got coming on in about 10 minutes is George Walker.
You'll love George, and George will give you a super interview. He has been traveling with this movie that they made of that bus trip of Zane's. They're showing the movie all over the country now. Everywhere they went, when they shot the movie, they went and showed the movie. And George has been a real good spokesman.
Tell me, in your mind, a seminal George Walker story from the prankster days. I mean, one where he maybe you considered buying him his first Rolex or something.
He bought the Rolex. He bought it.
You know, you patted him on the back that day. Well, give me a good George Walker story.
Well, good George Walker story. Well, he drove the bus that Zane had a lot. He and this other guy named Turley. And so they had broken down and they needed parts. And this was in California. And so Turley lived up there, and he had this place, just buses and shacks like that, so off the road where he lived. But he had all these nuts and bolts and parts and everything. And so George went there and got and fixed the whole bus. I mean, there was all kinds of things wrong. Suddenly went wrong with it, you know, and they couldn't get the parts anywhere. And then this guy Turley had them, so George found them and put them together. George also is a real good mechanic.
Yeah, I mean, all you guys are like wonks, you know. I mean, I just wish you. I mean, I don't know. Finally, Ken Babbs, as we wrap up part 2 here, I just wanted you to talk about what is been the most inspiring thing that you have come across or witnessed or even participated in the last in 2016.
Well, we always climb this little hill over here by Kesey's farm called Mount Pisgah, which is a good climb. And this Easter, we do it every Easter, all of us. And this Easter, I was up there, and I'm kind of pokey now and not going at the speed I used to, but I still go up there and down. And so I was up there, and everybody else is gone, and so is my son Simon and I. And we were coming down, and we could see all around us this tremendous big black cloud. And we got a little ways down, and this big black cloud came over us, and the thunder and the lightning was going. And then suddenly, right in front of us was this huge yellow ball right in front of our eyes. I mean, mammoth. And then I fell back. It was so powerful. And then this thunderclap knocked me off my feet. I fell back on my butt. And I got up. I was just screaming in ecstasy. I'd never seen or heard anything like that in my whole life. Nobody could ever produce anything like that, unless maybe you set off an atom bomb or something. And I realized afterwards this was a lightning that hit right in front of us. And then I went down. I was telling everybody at the potluck we had afterwards, and Chuck Kesey, who's a real kind of science guy, he says, yeah, he says, that's what it's like. He says, when you see lightning hit, you don't see a bolt come down and a bolt hit the ground. It's like that. It's an explosion of light right in front of you.
Wow. So that was a bolt of lightning right in front of you.
I'd say no farther away than 20 feet.
Ken Kesey delivering the blow this year on the hike. You know, he's looking down on you, man.
Absolutely. I got home. I emailed him right away, but I don't know what was going on. His server was down or something.
Ken Babbs. Also, how's your new book coming along? I just sent you a bunch of new transcripts from our first.
Oh, good. I like those. Those are really good. Thanks for doing that.
How's the book coming?
Well, it's coming along. I'm working on it every day. It's funny you were talking all about that Trips Festival. That's the section I've just been working on.
The Trips in Watts.
Well, I'm working on that too. Watts. I'm doing all the acid tests in like 3 chapters, and I just finished them.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, did you feel like Tom Wolfe? Did you spend any time with Tom Wolfe to get the true story across? Do you feel like he did a good job?
Well, Tom Wolfe didn't come around until after the bus trip. And in fact, the first time I ever saw him was when the night Kesey got out of jail. He was there at the jail for some reason. And he had already written that really neat book about the surfers in Southern California. I can't remember.
Right.
But he was developing that style that he used in the electric Kool-Aid acid test. And so I think he got most of his information from one of the guys on the trip named Sandy Lehmanhout, who was in New York, and Tom was in New York. But the important thing about that book is that the style of his writing and the way he said everything in there was so great and so wonderful that it was an instant hit. You know, that book is still being reprinted every year since 1968. You know, a lot of people bitch about it because they say, I wasn't right, that wasn't right. But none of that makes any difference. It's all a myth after 50 years. Everything contributes to the myth. What we're doing today contributes to the myth. And it doesn't matter if it's right, wrong, or what, because over the years, all the stuff that's been added to the myth will slowly, lots of it slough off until there'll be nothing left but this pinnacle of truth, and that will be the story. It's something like the Odyssey or the Iliad, say 2,000 years from now. And I can't wait to read that one.
Well, you're riffing. We're just getting cooking here. That book was called The Pump House Gang, right?
Oh, it wasn't. That was a story.
It's a story.
The book was called Tangerine Flake something or other.
All right, we'll get to that. All right, Sky Pilot, much love, Ken. I'll send you I'll send you a full copy of this part 2, and I look forward to checking in with you again. Especially, is it Don Buchla?
Buchla, yeah, Don Buchla, Buchla. Yeah, you can Google it.
Buchla, Don Buchla. All right, Mr. Babbs, much love, man. Carry on.
Okay, thanks, Jake.
Cheers,
Great
brother.
Talk to you, and happy trails, everybody out there all over the world. Keep your spirits up. Don't break the cool, and most important of all, don't bug the fuzz.
All right, Babbs. Peace out. Later on.
Okay.
Later.
Bye-bye.
We'll be right back with George Walker on the Jake Feinberg Show. Welcome back inside the Parisi Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is hour number 2 of the Jake Feinberg Show.